March Rules Committee meeting to order. Dora, would you give the invocation, please?
Dear gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and we thank you for the opportunity to gather here in this country. We just pray that you will guide us and direct us to do for the good of the Cherokee Nation. We pray for our chief and deputy chief and lift them up to you. Keep us safe as we all travel home today. Father, we just thank you, for it's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Shelley, could you do roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Joe Deere. Keith Austin. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates.
Here.
Sean Crittenden. Here. Mike Dobbins. Rex Jordan. Here. Johnny Kidwell. Here. Darrell Legg. Here. Weston O'Fire. Dora Petzkowski.
Here.
Joshua Sam. Here. Movada Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Condessa Teehee. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
All right, good deal. If everybody has had a chance to look over the minutes, could I have a motion, please? I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's start off our reports. First from the Marshal Service, Shannon Buell. Here he comes.
Good afternoon.
Oh, sir.
Beyond the normal quarterly or the monthly report I give out, we've been very active this last month in what we consider our special operations, which is everything from search and rescue to body recoveries to armed barricaded individuals to high-risk warrant service, and we even had one hostage rescue out of Adair County. So we've been, my team on that side of the fence has been very active. We had remains found in 2 different areas within the reservation that we helped on. We helped on one missing child and several barricades. So other than the special operations that I don't have on here, everything else is going well. We're just trying to, we're in the middle of hiring right now. So if you have any people that you know that would want to be a marshal and meet the requirements, we're looking. I have them go to Cherokee.org and go on employment and they can find that resource. I will just let them know it's a daunting task. There's a lot of hoops they have to go through. There's a lot of stuff they have to do, but I will guarantee if they get on, it's the most rewarding job, in my opinion, that you could ever have. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for Marshal Buell? Danny?
Marshal, is there any way that we need to, as far as the retirement system for the marshals, would that be a better situation to get people to apply? Because I hear through the grapevine that you know there's a lot of already existing, you know, maybe from the Highway Patrol or different departments, but our retirement is not what it is with everybody else. Is that an issue, or is that something we need to fix?
I will be honest and say that we always look at everything. When we look at recruitment, retention, what happens after the fact, and quite honestly, you know, the Cherokee Nation, we have a good system in place. We have good processes. We're always looking at making those processes better, whatever that is. But I do want to, anytime we evaluate any benefit of an employee, we have to look at the employee pool as an entirety, if that makes sense. I came to this job knowing that I didn't have a law enforcement retirement when I came here. I knew that the 401k is good, the match for Cherokee Nation is good, but I came here 21 years ago mainly because I wanted to be a marshal, and I wanted to be a marshal for Cherokee Nation. I wanted to serve my people. And quite honestly, that's just me, you know, just first person, is the retirement wasn't in my plane of thinking at that juncture, if that makes sense. Throughout the years of 20 years, you get asked by other agencies to go to other agencies like people do, and I've given that thought time and time again. You know, do I want to go there for A, B, or C, whatever that, you know, do I want to go in the Fed? Do I want to do these things? And what draws me back is I work for my people. and that's what draws me. Now, would a law enforcement retirement be good? Well, of course. But there's how do you get that? If you look around the nation, there are law enforcement retirements and firemen retirements, that the states that are running those are going bankrupt because they can't facilitate that fund extended. They started a lot of those things when the life expectancy wasn't what it is now. Now you have police officers that start at 21, or firemen start at 21, they retire at 41, and they're living into their late 90s, and that plans that they've had are now paying that. Well, that's fine for let's say the first 15 retirement groups, but now we're 20 years later. So I want to be very hesitant anytime we look at something that could have a longitudinal impact on the tribe long past after I'm dead. It's definitely something that we look at every option we can to benefit our recruiting, our hiring, our retention. We actively ask questions and look. But I can't sit up here and say that definitely we need a law enforcement retirement today. I can't say that. There's too many questions that I still have as far as, one, I look at four things when I do anything. Is it illegal? If it's legal, I'm good. Is it moral? Is it ethical? And is it fiscally sound? Those are the four things I always look at in anything I do. I want to make sure that if I can say yes to those four things, then why not do it? If I say I don't know to one of those four things, then we need to pause and we need to look at that. Is it legal to do a law enforcement retirement? Yes. Is it moral? Maybe. Is it ethical? Maybe. Is it fiscally sound? I don't know. So that's my pause. I definitely would look at those things, but I don't want to say yes at all. How's that? I mean, the last thing I want to do is, and I hate to, is take, the tribe has one pie. It's this big around, unless you can tell me the pie is going to get a lot bigger, you're going to have to take slices out of that pie for other programs. It's hard for me to sit up here and tell you, yes, I want A, B, and C, but you're not going to have an MRI machine for my mother to get her diagnosis right. Boy, that's tough for anybody here at the tribe. Administration has to balance those things. The council has to balance those things. Quite frankly, I do in my position. So it's definitely something we've looked at over the years. I have not found a good plan for that. I can tell you that other civilized tribes are looking at stuff like that. It might not be what would be considered that in the truest sense of the word of law enforcement retirement, but we're all looking. But until I am certain that I would be able to present a plan to administration, because I would never present it to you, it'd be a plan that I would present to administration that I feel is fiscally sound, morally, ethical, and legal, then I'm not going to. And quite frankly, I have never posed a plan to any administration here because I haven't found one that I'm okay with bringing in front of administration, if that makes sense. So if you hear out there that anybody but me is the hang-up, that is absolutely not true. If I find a good plan that I believe is fiscally sound for the tribe in its entirety, and I believe everything else lines up, then I'll present it to who I need to present it to. But until then, I'm the holdup on that. So.
Are you good, Councilman? Okay. Anybody else? Dora?
I just had a comment. I had a Cherokee citizen that contacted me a few weeks ago, and he has foster children in his home, and their 15-year-old foster daughter was privileged to go on the youth hunt. And I just wanted to let you know that this gentleman couldn't say enough good about the experience this young lady had, and that Mike Reese and Lori Greathouse just treated her like a queen and made that day so special for her. So I just want to thank the Marshal Service and all that are involved with that event.
Well, I will tell you, that program was actually started by a couple of my marshals. It wasn't even my plan. They're in the conservation side of the Marshal Service. They do other things too, but they teach bow safety, hunter safety, stuff like that. And we had some members in the community had hunting property that they said, we'll let you hunt on here for free. We'll help clean the stuff when it's done. So I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. It was their insight when they came to me and said, can we do this? And all I did was approve it. How's that? Thank you for speaking about them, but Mike Reese and Farron Pritchett is the two marshals that really led that thing. And from all accounts, it was so overwhelmingly successful that the citizen side of the house, the people that have the property and do that, have offered to do that again next year. So it's kind of a neat deal, but thank you very much for acknowledging them.
Anybody else? Marshal Buell, we appreciate you coming in. Continue to do the job you're doing, and we'll see you next month.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. All right, from the Office of the Attorney General, Sarah Hill. You gonna hold that door open for that lady? Attaboy.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Sarah.
I had a pretty comprehensive report just a few weeks ago, so rather than go through all of my normal numbers, I thought I would just tell you that we're doing most of the same things we were doing before, doing more of them. The thing to keep an eye out is we will file on Monday, we'll file an amicus brief in Castro Huerta. That's the deadline to file in the Supreme Court case. So this weekend will be dedicated to getting all of that exactly the way that we want it so that it can be filed. And I'm very happy with the shape that it's taking. Also, the defendant in that case has filed their response already to the state. So you may have seen that the governor was on television last night. It's not too surprising to me that it would be after the respondents file their brief, but before our briefs are filed, there's a little media circus maybe about McGirt on the news. So that happened, but our response to all of the issues raised by the state will be on file on Monday, and I think that all of you will be proud by the document that we file. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'll dispense with my normal longer report this month.
Does anybody have any questions for AG Hill? Yeah, I'd just like to, quick comment. A couple weeks ago, there was AG's office had a meeting with chiefs in Delaware County, and that went really well, talking about any concerns or any questions that various law enforcement had with the nation on how things were going. So appreciate you all for putting that together.
Yes,
Keith?
sir.
I wanted to relate to you that I had, the young lady who cuts my hair was telling me that she was called to jury duty as in the federal grand jury in Tulsa. And she sat on a McGirt case that was a shooting case. And she talked about her experience and about how it went and how justice was handled, and it really was so normal. And it was really, really good to hear this in the community, that it's demystifying once somebody's gone through the process and actually seen it work. It demystified it for her and her family. She committed herself to this process, obviously, and but served the community through that process. But it demystifies it once somebody's actually see that it does work. And I think that's very valuable that our population sees it working.
I think that's an excellent insight, and we have had jury trials recently. We have jury trials again at the end of April. And so also, and it's been my experience that jurors, for the most part, who do participate as jurors, find the process valuable. It demystifies the justice process a lot for them, and they take their jobs extremely seriously. And we've had jurors, we had one juror that came from Bartlesville to sit on our last panel and wasn't selected to sit on that particular jury, and still stayed all day just to watch the trial because they were curious about the case and how the tribal justice system worked. So I think the solution to much of this is time and getting people used to things being a little bit different. And I think you're right that demystification comes with experience with the tribal justice system and with the federal system as well.
Well, we need to purposefully thank those who commit themselves to the jury process. It's a commitment, and it can be somewhat overwhelming to people when they make that commitment. And because I think in the federal, it's a 3-month commitment or something like that. And it's a real commitment to serve in a federal grand jury, in a federal jury, I should say. So we need to, when we know of somebody in our community that we find has served in that capacity, we need to tell them we appreciate that. It really matters to our justice system.
Yeah, it doesn't operate without them, for sure.
Okay, anybody else? Sarah, we appreciate you, and keep up the good work. Keep defending our sovereignty and defending McGirt. There's some that just don't want to accept it, and your office has done a good job of representing it as well.
It's a privilege that I never don't appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, FOIA GRA request, Gwen Turpin. Are you here, Gwen? There she is.
Good afternoon. It's good to see all of you. I apologize for missing the meeting on the 14th, but my report is the same. We've had 3 FOIA requests, no GRA requests, and everything's been updated on the website, and we don't have anything outstanding at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Gwen? All right, Gwen, I think we're all full. You have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
From the Tax Commission, Sharon Swepson.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Sharon.
I believe you have my report. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for Sharon? J office?
We got one picked out, so as soon as they get through the process, we should have another one
All right.
up there, and hopefully this one will stay.
All right, awesome. Any other questions? All right, Sharon, good job.
Thank
You
you.
have a good evening. From the Gaming Commission, Janice Purcell.
She was here, she stepped out real quick, so.
Okay. Let's see, let's skip her. Human Services, Samantha Hendrix, are you here? Yep, there she is.
Bumped up in the line, I like that. Not always good being last, you know? So you have my report. Of course, obviously, if you have any questions, please let me know. I do have a couple of things I did want to mention that we're doing in HR to highlight some of the successes to this point. So our learning management system went live on January 4th. This provided online access to training and development opportunities for our employees. As of today, we've had 4,374 employees that have logged into the system, and we've gone live with, we actually had completed courses of 7,083, and then which is over 2,500 hours in training. So pretty excited about that. You know, it's very much a benefit to our employees. Big shout out to our IT department and also our training department for going live and having this success in such a short amount of time. And another thing, I've got about 4 things here. So we're optimizing a new hire experience by revamping orientation. Coming in May, new employee orientation will have a new look to enhance the new hire experience. It will highlight all the positive attributes, services, and how to contribute to the Cherokee successes, Cherokee Nation successes. And for new hires, as we all know, first impressions, so we're going to do our very best to do the best first impression for our new hires to continue their journey as employees. Then on our third thing here is over the next several months, candidates will have the ability to text to apply. That's something we haven't had before, and it'll make it really easy for our applicants to be able to apply for new positions to our website. So, and then another success. Over the last several weeks, we've doubled our number in orientation. So we'll continue to push and streamline the processes. So we're starting to see those numbers climb as far as new hires being hired. And then next month, this will be something really cool. Really looking forward to this. Cherokee Nation new hires in Jay and Stillwell will be able to complete their pre-employment screening remotely. Instead of driving to Tahlequah for the pre-employment screening, which is what we do today, we will be able to provide this service at a convenient location at their hometown. So they won't have to drive all the way to Tahlequah to do their pre-employment screening. We're planning to roll it out to the rest of the 14 counties, but as of today, we're starting with a slow rollout. So very, very excited about some of the changes, and I always end it with, you have my report. Obviously, if you have any questions in relation to my report, I'll be happy to answer those. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Samantha?
Okay.
All right, Samantha, thank you. Good report.
Thank
You have a
you.
good evening. All right, we'll go back up to Janice Purcell. I saw her. Yep, here she comes. With the Gaming Commission.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Janice.
I submitted my report. Does anyone have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Janice? Nope, doesn't look like it. Janice, appreciate you, and you have a good evening.
You too, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, that takes us down to old business. Wes, you want to take number 1?
Pull back up here. Yeah, this is a resolution demonstrating support for United States Senate Bill 1265, the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act. Respectfully, I ask the council to give me one more month to acquire and send the necessary information to this council's body prior to voting on this bill, so I make a motion to table it to next month's meeting.
I have a motion to table. I have a second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. It'll be tabled till next month. All right, under new business, Melvina, would you take that one, please?
It's a resolution confirming the reappointment of Johnny Arp as a board member of the Economic Development Trust Authority. I put that in form of motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I believe Johnny Arp's here. Is he not here? Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Hey, Johnny, would you come step in here and say a few words to the council, please? Don't be shaking your head. Hi, Johnny.
Mike, it's always an honor and privilege to come in front of this distinguished board and council. The chief's done told me to keep it short or I'll blow it, so, I'm going to listen to his words of wisdom. But, I do think that this has been a great program, been leading to it for several years, and I think it's had quite an economic impact for our 14-county area. And, with the new businesses, the new jobs it's created, again, I'm just proud of what it's accomplished, and I think you've got an outstanding staff that works in it and is involved in it. And it's not a paying board, and it's something that, we've never received compensation for, but at the same time, Cherokee Nation was there for me as a student. I can think Mike and Melvina can testify, we all came from very poor backgrounds. Back when I was getting ready to go to college, it was Cherokee Nation that had the confidence that gave me a job at that time. It gave me a boost and was able to, take care of my career. And it's continued to help in the area of my kids graduating from pharmacy school next week. Again, it gave him a helping hand during that process. So, again, it's an honor and privilege to help the Cherokee Nation in any way I can. And if you have any questions, feel free.
Anybody have any questions for Johnny?
Added as a sponsor.
Did you get that? Okay. Keith, too? Danny? Joe? All right, well, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Johnny, you've been reaffirmed once again. We appreciate your service. We appreciate the job that you do. And, anybody, if you don't know Johnny Arp, he does a lot of things in a lot of different communities, and a lot of that is for free. But he has always been a good advocate for helping people anywhere. So, Johnny, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good. And he's also a good actor. He just did a yeehaw play the other night.
Melvina, let's not talk about what character I played or anything, so thank you, each and every one of you.
All right, number 2, Victoria, will you take that?
Yes. This is a resolution authorizing the submittal of FY22 Substance Abuse and Suicide Prevention Program, Substance Abuse Prevention, Treatment, and Aftercare Application to Indian Health Services. Put this in the form of a motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I,
Go ahead, Doc.
yeah, I just want to be added as a sponsor to this, and also to number 3, just right after, wish to be added as a sponsor.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Keith, the same. And Danny, the same. Joe Deere, Sean, Candessa. Everybody? All right, everybody. That's good. You too? All right, everybody. Wes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just was going to say that the application, once we get that submitted, are we able to get a copy of that application? And probably the application for number 3, too, just like to look at it. Appreciate it. Appreciate it, Speaker.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carries. Number 3, Victoria, go ahead and take that one too.
Yes. A resolution authorizing the submittal of FY22 substance abuse and suicide prevention program, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention application to Indian Health Services. I move for its approval.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, number 4, Darrell Legg, you want to take that?
The Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Reauthorization Act of 2022, I'll put that in form of motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Victoria?
Yes. I would like to request Chief to come forward to speak about this.
Okay. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And like I advised Johnny Earp, maybe my presence would only detract from this presentation, but I did want to answer any questions. This is a really important piece of legislation, in my view, to all of us, because it's the reason that many of us were drawn into public service for the Cherokee Nation in the first place. And I want you to know, as each of you do, that I visited with over the years, that we've helped shape this legislation based on the feedback we've gotten from council over the years, trying to do more, for example, in emergency housing rehab assistance, trying to do something with respect to new home construction, trying to address as we can issues with crisis housing, whether it's domestic violence or it's homelessness, and to do some of the innovative programs we're doing in language. And this addresses all of that. I think this is something that will have a significant impact on the Cherokee people. I appreciate the support of the council, but I certainly want to be available directly to answer any questions that you may have. And we have other folks here as well. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does anybody have any questions? Joe Deere?
I was just going to have you reinstate for people about the housing application is not online right now.
Right.
And the reason why it's not online, what they're doing with that, just so people know.
Right. So the new home construction application at the Housing Authority was just temporarily suspended as the council considered this legislation, because there will be some, I think, and the Housing Authority can speak more precisely to this, just a few changes to that application to make sure, I think in particular when people apply, there's some more upfront information on land ownership, for example. And so rather than keep that up there as we're looking at this legislation, I think they just hit pause for a little bit, but it will be coming back on, I think, as early as tomorrow. Jerry Killers here can confirm that. We do have hundreds of people waiting on the landed list, those with land, and hundreds of people waiting that don't have land. And I think significantly this legislation will help hundreds across both of those lists and across all of our reservation.
Wes?
So, Chief, on, I see here, and it's a great thing to expand the Bonnie Kirk Village for $4 million. Do we have anything like that in plan over in Adair County for our new facility over there? Is that something we're going to expect later, or is it something that's going to be tied to this bill?
Well, I appreciate you pointing that out, because I believe the language talks about expanding Bonnie Kirk, which is the property that is next to the Language Center, or other language villages. Howard Payton is here, and his department has been trying to identify places where we could do additional language villages. Southern Adair County would be a good place to do that just because of the large number of speakers relative to the rest of the reservation. There could be other places. I think it's something the language department's still trying to identify, Counselor, but it's a good initiative to do it other than here. This is a good start. But
Glad to see that in there. Appreciate it, Chief. Appreciate it, Speaker.
Melvina?
Well, Chief, I just want to say thank you for your hard work on this. Housing and water sanitation is, I have a compassion for that, knowing, the needs out of the community, and I just really think this was a great idea.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Sean?
Man, what a big deal. Hey, 7 years in, there's a lot of people before me talked about this, but wow. Big, big deal. Where's OBrien at? Is he back in there? Boy, I mean, I can just say from 2015, just here it is. And you and a whole lot of people are fixing it, so it deserves a thank you for what you've done here, so.
Well, thank you, Councilman. I remember Councilor Crittenden took me around Adair County when I was the Secretary of State of the Cherokee Nation to show me some of the housing needs, and we know that they're everywhere, but it was particularly eye-opening that day. I thought maybe he was going to, it was a one-way trip, maybe he was going to leave me, but he did bring me back, and based on that, I committed to work on this harder.
Candace?
Well, I just want to kind of add on to the kudos for this amazing plan that is going to provide sustainable and stable housing to a lot of our people. We all are aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of the basic needs is shelter. And I think that this is going to go a long way. I'm very, very proud to be one of the sponsors on this legislation, and I look forward to the great things that we'll continue to do as we move forward. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Victoria?
Yes, Chief, I'm most gratified to read about the funding that we're going to be using for constructing crisis shelters, addressing domestic abuse and homelessness. Domestic violence is very important to me and to all of us here, and I just think that's one of the best parts of this plan, in addition to all the other good things. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that after the council committed in the ARPA framework from last year some amount of funds for poverty reduction, that Anna Knight, who's here, led a internal task force, and one of the recommendations was crisis shelters. And so we've taken that idea and incorporated it into this legislation. And Mr. Speaker, if I could just mention one thing, a number that we've not talked about, and a number we're still refining, but one thing we should keep in mind is that as we build new homes, what we're really doing beyond the very important thing of addressing people who are on the wait list, hundreds of people, Mr. Speaker, across landless list and landed list, is we're actually for the next 30 years generating revenue to the Housing Authority as these payments come back in, and all of those dollars go back in to sustain the Housing Authority's programs. We're estimating it right now at about $108 million. That's just sort of back of the envelope arithmetic, but we know that this will continue for the next 30 years, well beyond when all of us are here to do good things for our people. And there's also the impact aid aspect, Mr. Speaker. We know that this will generate impact aid for public schools. So I think a positive thing that'll outlast us on here. Except Councilor Sam, he'll probably still be here.
Anybody else? Well, Chief, I'd personally just like to say thank you too, and like Councilman Crittenden, during my first term, one of the most asked questions that I had is, hey, I've had my dadgum application in forever to get a house. I got my land. When am I ever going to get this processed? And, you know, then the nation's hit with COVID, and gosh, we've been through so much. We lost so many people, and we've had some rough times, but, you know, to be able to turn negative things into positive now that we have a chance to do so. Chief, that's so important, and I think that reflects upon you and your administration that, you know, you guys do care about the people, and this council does care about the people, and this is what you're doing to help. I mean, it makes our job so easy whenever we can help our constituents. And from everything that you've had to deal with in your administration through COVID and different things, just like to say thank you for stepping up now and doing this to help our people. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, sir. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? All right. The motion carries. All right. Number 5. Councilman Sams, you want to take that?
This is a resolution establishing the second ARPA spending framework under the Cherokee Nation COVID-19 Respond, Recover, and Rebuild Plan and amending Resolution 26-21. And I put that in the form of a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, there is no discussion. All in favor? All opposed? All right, it carries. Okay, number 6. EO, you want to take that one?
Sir, this is an act and restraining Title 26 elections of the Cherokee Nation Code annotated. I put this in form of a motion.
Substitute revision. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All right, discussion. Johnny?
Mr. Speaker, I just want to point out a couple of things. I apologize for these. These have just kind of popped up here. But the first thing I'd like to bring to everyone's attention after going through it. Now, many of the changes are excellent. I mean, they're kind of what we were, looking for in the very beginning. But a couple of things that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention. First is on page, on number in the very beginning of the definitions, number 22, original rolee, we strike that out, but we do not strike it out. Later on, it's used in, on page, or what section is it? Oh, chapter 3, qualifications, registration of voters, letter B, we utilize it there. So we'll need to make a friendly, hopefully offer a friendly amendment to strike that. If we're going to strike it from the front, we might as well strike it from the back and not utilize it in the election code. The second thing that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention, I just noticed this. When we say in the very beginning, when we have our definitions for signature, we make the change here that says, or a person's mark with 2 witnesses. However, we don't make that change in the back on, say, section 78, return of absentee ballots, when we say a person can make their mark. We're just saying one signature there. So there's a little bit of a mismatch on how we're doing with the signature. And we'll need to discuss that and see how to move forward. The last thing that I would offer is on page, and I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, this just kind of first came up here, but in that same section, section 78, return of absentee ballots, it says on the second page of that section, it adds back in on the Thursday before the election day, which, if I'm not mistaken, this body voted that legislation. That legislation did not pass at our last meeting. So this edit puts that back in, just for everyone's edification, and that'll need to be discussed quickly before we move forward. Sir?
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
Good points. Keith?
Yeah, there's enough little things that I think probably all of us have caught something, that it's going to be a heck of a lot for us to try to work through in a short period of time here. But I wonder if it would be appropriate for us to table this for 1 month with the idea that give us 10 days to review, submit those ideas, something so that they could all be filtered together, because a lot of them are going to be the same things. And then have it to where all those ideas are able to be incorporated into it real quickly. But I think we need to give it a real short time window to do that.
So, you didn't make the motion yet. You want to continue to have discussion, then you will make that motion?
I don't mind at all having the discussion. It just feels to me like this is likely
Sure.
to have too much for us to try to adopt this quickly.
Well, if you would be in agreement, if we could discuss just a little bit, give some people to say some
Absolutely.
things, and then we can come back and address that.
Absolutely. I've got several things that have glared out at me that I think are kind of the housekeeping issues again.
Right.
Like where, as Counselor Kidwell was talking about the original mark in 34 of Section 3, it says, signature or sign means a natural person's mark, no, a natural person's written name in a distinctive way. But it really doesn't say that that must be in his own, in that voter's own hand anywhere. It says written name. So I think that might be a little bit of a slippery slope there. Well, heck, there's so many sections here. Section C and subsection 17, it says it's about the election commission reporting to us, and it says on a month, they shall submit a report on a monthly basis and report in person to Rules Committee on a quarterly basis. But we still need to be able to request them at any time in between. So we need to be able to request them to come report to us if we ever feel that need to. And I think this actually would say they only have to come once a quarter. Well, we should be able to request them anytime we need them, right? So there's lots of little things like that. They're not big. They're just little things that could kind of slip through the cracks if we're not careful. And one very specific one to me is in section 12, subsection 7, no, pardon me, subsection 8. It talks about the posting of the results of an election, and it says that it will be on the website, and it takes out the being posted on the office. I believe for integrity's sake, it still needs to be publicly posted on the wall. That for integrity's sake, we need to have that backup so that we see the posting. We can look at that posting as well as what gets posted online. And this actually takes away that obligation. So there's several more. I won't go into everything, but there's there's enough here that I think it's going to get kind of overwhelming for one day.
Is that it, Councilman? All right, good. Anybody else? Candace?
Yeah, I had a couple observations. I really appreciate Councilor Kidwell's observation because I think we only received this revision, substitute revision, I'm not sure on the terminology there, moments ago. And in the one that's in our book, the specific sentence that Councilor Kidwell was referring to, it is amended in the second version. So I almost feel a little like someone was trying to sneak one past some of us, considering how this body voted. I believe it was 9-8 against this particular verbiage that's now in this in the substitute revision. The second item that I would like to bring up is section 11, and I believe it is going to be A1, and it is about the appointment of election commissioners. In this current version, it says the principal chief shall appoint one member for, and it's referring to the staggered terms, but it does not require that council confirm that appointment. And of course, I think that it's good practice for the legislative body to confirm that appointment from the executive, and I would like to see that added back into this code. Thank you, Speaker.
Yep. Anybody else? Wes?
Yeah, I'm just like Councilor Teehee here. We had a version that was sent to us, and then now we had one that was just laid on our desk today. And elections are the cornerstone of our democracy and how we are transparent with how we do that in equal protection. And it's a very important thing. That's why we tasked ourselves 2 years ago. We had a work group. I think Councilor Deere was on there, Councilor Austin was on there, even Speaker Shambaugh was on there, and it took a while, and Councilor Eo was on there, Eo Smith was on there. There was a lot of work that went into that. That was already previously discussed last month of how important it was. So that way we could iron out all the details like Councilor Austin mentioned. There's a lot of little scrubbers there, and can fix that. However, there's a lot more injected in this bill that I think we need to do something about, like creating another work group to get through the possible issues that we may have. It does seem like this council, I'm very proud of it, does seem like there's a possibility to move to doing something like that, whether it's to table the next month so we can get more work on it, also more information out to our citizens of what the changes are possibly going to be, get their feedback. But I guess my question is, I do see the two authors here. Where did this stem from of bringing this back up as a revision? Was it the council brought it forward, or was it just both the two attorneys here that wanted to bring this revision down?
You mean the substitute bill?
The whole thing. I mean, where did it derive from, of having a whole entire election reform bill brought to us?
Well, a lot of the work, a lot of the changes in here were recommended by the AG's office. There were a lot of different things that the AG's office is tasked with during an election, and during every election, we sort of think about what are the things that we were not sure about, that the law perhaps was not clear about, what are some of the questions that we got over and over again from candidates about the election code, what kind of procedures, could be clarified, and so we wanted to go through it and highlight those things that we thought probably could use a good review. Because either they weren't particularly clear or there seemed to be a lot of questions generated about them. So a lot of the things in here, came from that. And then, of course, we also went over those issues with the, counsel for the tribal council and talked about those issues with him as well. So that was kind of the process that brought this forward.
If I could supplement that as well. Part of the impetus was that if there were any changes that need to be made for the next election, we need to have them to the BIA for approval in sufficient time. So we had it up, what we think of today, for approval. If we move it, we're cutting it a little bit closer, but that was part of the impetus that brought it forward, that if any changes need to be made, they do have to happen now.
And the code is going to have to go back to the BIA regardless of whether you make changes or not, because you've made changes since the last time it was approved. So it will have to go back to the BIA. So the thought process was this was a relatively good time. There is a little bit of time to go over it and try to scrub out any changes or amendments that we need to make. There is, and I'm not saying it has to be passed today, but certainly, the clock is ticking on it and we need to get it to BIA because we don't know how long they're going to sit on it before they approve it.
What kind of time frame are we talking about? I think we had September, October of the last time we did the revision.
Yeah, I think that's cutting it pretty close. I know the BIA, the regional office is still on work from home, so that they don't, all of their processes are a little bit slower now, so,
Right.
I mean, of course, this council you're your own masters, obviously, I can't dictate to you any time frame, but I would just suggest that you work on getting it passed sooner rather than later, because we don't know exactly how long that BIA process will take, and I'd rather get it to them a little bit earlier this time so that they have plenty of time. So if you can get it signed into law here in the next, couple of months, then we should be good. If it goes on very much longer than that, I will begin to be worried about it.
Okay, and then one last question. Do you see in this bill that you brought forward any Cherokee Nation or U.S. constitutional laws that have been, that could be construed as here as being in violation?
No.
Okay, just to kind of bring a quick attention to the council, Chapter 5, Section 48, restrictions related to independent expenditures, Part A, it says prohibition prohibiting against independent expenditures. Independent expenditures shall be prohibited in the elections of the Cherokee Nation. That violates the United States Supreme Court case, and I know how honored we are of upholding the United States Supreme Court case due to the Murphy-McGirt case, the Citizens United versus the FEC, and the court held that the free speech clause of the First Amendment prohibits the government from restricting independent expenditures for political campaigns by corporations, including nonprofit corporations, labor unions, and other associations. And putting this in this bill would violate that U.S. Supreme Court case, and I think it would be mindful for us definitely not to move forward with this today and look at forward like Councilor Austin suggested, possibly tabling it, or I really like the idea of a work group, and I think that there's probably enough of us here that we can meet more regularly than 1 month at a time to try to get this expedited per the request of our legal advice here. So, Chapter 5, be Section 48. It says restrictions related to independent expenditures. Part A says a prohibition against that independent expenditure on there. I wish I had a page number here, and I could give you.
It was page 27 on the original version in your book.
47 on the original version.
27.
Yeah, And so that would be in violation of that Citizens United versus the FEC. That's a First Amendment violation, which is the Citizens United versus the FEC. 2010, whenever I think it was held.
Anything further, Councilman?
No, I appreciate it, Speaker.
All right, Julia.
Thank you. I wondered if the Attorney General and Mr. Young could explain to me what the legal basis is for submitting our election codes to the BIA for approval. I didn't, I know that that's a requirement of IRA tribes, but we're not organized under that. And I guess in all of these years, I have never realized that we were submitting our election codes to the BIA for approval. When we made revisions in September of 2020, I guess it was, is that right? And we didn't submit or we didn't approve those out of the tribal council until September or October of that year for the 21 election. Did we send those to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for what, approval? I'm just very curious about what the legal basis for, submitting to the BIA is about on our governing process.
Right, no, I agree, it is an infringement upon tribal sovereignty, but it is one in federal law. It's the Principal Chiefs Act. And so any election that is held in the Cherokee Nation that involves a race for principal chief, that has to be approved by the BIA. That's why your changes weren't approved previously, because if you're only changing it for an election that involves the tribal council, there's no need to submit it. But if it's a principal chief election, it has to be submitted to the BIA for approval. They've always been submitted.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm trying to think back to the cases of that era. The Harjo case did not sort of render that moot then, because it deals specifically with tribal councils. Is that the reasoning, or?
Yeah, this is.
Because, I mean, yeah.
And I certainly, can provide, the specific language that requires it. And like I said, I find it offensive.
No, I've got the Principal Chiefs Act. I know what yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like you, I find it offensive that we have to do it. And I think that it's an incursion into tribal sovereignty, but it is a matter of federal law and something that we have to comply with.
Okay, so when we passed the revisions in 2020, I believe it was, we passed those out of tribal council later in the year, September, October, something like that, and yet, even at that date, it seems that it was, no, you're saying that was because it was only for a tribal council race?
Right.
Because it was for a midterm? I see.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
Sure.
It is offensive.
No, I agree.
Johnny?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask two things. First, if the changes were made in 2020 and then they were codified in the election code, those would eventually impact the chief's race. So it doesn't make sense to me personally how one would go in one end, because any change to the election code is going to impact every election. There wasn't a chief's race coming up at that point in time. And the second thing, ma'am, if you don't mind, if you would speak to, if you can, Councilmember No Fire brought up a point about the Supreme Court. Do you have any, that ruling, do you have any input on that at all? Do you have visibility on that? And if you don't, that's okay, but thought I'd ask. Mr. Speaker.
Put simply, Citizens United does not apply to Indian tribes.
Any further?
Nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just a quick follow-up that, just so that way I can kind of educate you a little bit. It would impact tribes. It is a U.S. Supreme Court. We are a sovereign, dependent nation. We are required to follow federal law and federal case law. So if there's a law out there or a federal case law out there, we would have to be complicit with it. It's the same reason why the Supreme Court case impacted citizenship of the Cherokee Nation with the Freedmen. Same thing with the McGirt decision. We decided to tie on to that because it was a decision that was out there that affected American Indians. Regardless, it's something that we all have to comply with what the United States Supreme Court says. So appreciate it, Speaker.
Was there somebody up toward the front? Was there anybody else up that way? Darrell, go ahead.
Oh, what is considered large-scale outdoor advertising? 4x8, 8x2, a blimp with your name go, I mean, that would have to be
The
defined.
blimp for sure, the blimp.
Yeah,
Those LED trucks.
right on, right on.
What section are you looking at, Counselor?
Chapter 5, 49, campaign material disclaimer, number 3, where it says, you have to have
Any large-scale outdoor advertising?
I mean, it's not a defined term, so the question, I think that's it. And this is the sort of, I think, why the AG's office keeps coming back for additional changes to the election code as we move forward in time, because things get raised, it seems like a large-scale advertising, we could certainly look at defining that term so that people would have a better sense of what large-scale advertising is if you don't believe that the plain language would make it clear. So that's something that we can flag.
Victoria?
Yes, I don't see a need for a work group, but I do agree that we should table this for a month, and the counselors can send their recommendations to our Attorney Young, and we can iron it out in that period of time without having to go wait for a work group.
Yeah.
I'll make that a motion.
No, there hasn't been a motion made yet. We had discussion, then we were going to make a motion after discussion. So we have a motion and a second to table for a month. Yep. So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. And if you would, your suggestions, send them to our council attorney. Things that you want looked at or revisions that you think that are made or need clarified before next month, so it can be presented back to us. Keith?
Can I ask for one thing be provided to us before that? The revised act does not have page numbers. For reference to our notes back to John, if we were able to say page number whatever, it would be so much clearer for communication. If a copy could just be provided to us electronically with page numbers added to it, so that it would make it so much easier to communicate.
Danny?
And also, the point Counselor No Fire brought up, yeah, and apparently there's a disagreement, so we need to make sure that if it's not viable, then we don't need to worry about it. So, I mean, with that said, as the council attorney and as the AG, if your opinion is that Counselor No Fires does not apply, then we as a council need to be assured of that.
There's no disagreement between Mr. Young and I on that point.
Well, okay, well, wherever we're with that, we just need to make sure that from where Counselor No Fire is coming with his information and Council Attorney Young. Yes, sir.
I can tell you now, Citizens United does not apply to Indian tribes, nor will it. And I can back that up with any kind of support I need. You get the last word on that one, though, but I'm staking my reputation on that one.
Councilman Deere?
Hey, John. Because I pulled that case up, it basically talks about the free speech clause and the First Amendment is why it's prohibited, correct? So when you do send out that clarification that Counselor No Fire brought up, clarify how that relates to the tribe versus white politics. And do that clarification, because if you dig down in there in Westlaw, you can get in there and you have the other stuff. And I think that will clarify for the layman people that are going to look at this too, to make a better decision. If you can clarify that in an email to us.
I'll send you legal support.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Wes?
Just one more quick comment, because it's all getting brought up here. You just said it, First Amendment right. First Amendment right belongs to all American citizens. So it does apply to everybody, American Indians as well, which would also impact, putting that in there, it'd be in violation of everyone's First Amendment right. So it would be applicable to tribes, period. It doesn't have to mention tribes, it doesn't mention state. just mentions if you're an American citizen, you have a First Amendment right. The violation of what Citizens United versus the FEC was, that would be in violation of an American right. We're an American Indians, we're an American Indian tribe. That is why it is affecting us, and we can't have that in our bill. So regardless of what they send out there, I'll also submit some other things that would argue that claim. So appreciate it, Speaker.
Okay. All right. If there's no other comment, we are going to move on. Okay. Yes, sir.
I just want to, one last thing. If Councilor No Fire, if you have any of that information that you have, please, will you send it to everybody? That way we can look at it all, yeah.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you.
All right. Good enough. Okay, that brings us to number 7, correct? Yes. All right. Danny, would you take that, please?
Yes, this is the discussion and possible action, Cherokee Nation Sports Teams Funding Program, Assistance Policy and Procedures. I make that in the form of a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Now, for discussion, Jody?
Okay, I've made a list of the changes that the work group has recommended. You can proceed ever how you like, but I'd like to go through all of them, and if you want to consider them all the changes as one vote, that'd probably simplify it. And then you can, if there's other revisions or changes that want to be discussed, I think that'd probably make it a lot simpler rather than trying to make a vote on each one of these changes. Some of them are basically housekeeping changes and everything, but some of them are actual changes to the policy. So first one is changing 14 county service area to Cherokee Nation Reservation and the at-large portions of the counties that are partially within the reservation. If my list, I went quickly through it a while ago, I think there's 5 pretty substantial counties: Muskogee, McIntosh, Wagner, Tulsa, and Ottawa, and then real small portions of Mays, Rogers, and Delaware. Item 2 is to change the 51% requirement to 50% and change the funding from $500 to $595 for that category. Also, number
Jody,
3.
You might tell them why that number, why it's $595, because we can't.
Yes, because if we go over, if we hit 600 over, it's going to be a taxable event for those coaches or parents, whoever's getting that check. So to avoid that, that's just the simplest way to do it. Stay under that amount. Number 3, add new eligibility category, 33% of the team, and $300 funding for that category. Number 4, remove the section talking about demonstrating self-help. It was in the policy, and we pretty much all know that that's part of the whole part of the team anyways, fundraisers and all that stuff. So us having it in a policy was not serving any purpose. Number 5, change the selection and verification to tribal council staff, verifying and processing those payments and then reporting to the Executive Finance Committee. We'd basically been doing that anyway because having to wait for approval through the Executive Finance Committee, would hold it up potentially a month, and you're talking about these little league teams and stuff. We'd already basically changed that anyway, so we'll just change it in the policy. Number 6, remove the section about written account of funds. They still have to turn in receipts. And that on that, number 7 is change the section about receipts to where it says receipts related to the season instead of after the check date, because we've had issues where they go by a lot of their stuff, and the way it has been, the receipts had to be dated after the check date, and that was kind of causing some issues. So as long as it's for the season, it'll be a lot simpler. Number 8, add the application language about it being leagues and not school-sponsored into the actual policy. It's been in the application, but we're going to add it to the policy. Number 9, change the policy of returning receipts after 6 months to 3 months to match the way the application, that 6 months period was causing some issues because if they applied late in the year and they had 6 months to apply for the, turn in receipts, they were already trying to apply for another year, and we don't approve them unless they've turned in receipts for the previous year. So shortening that to 3 months will help. Number 10, add the requirements to the policy about picking up checks. Has been, we were having them to pick up in the office only. And we can add that to the policy, but also add to the policy that the checks can be distributed by the council member. That'll help for those that live further away. So, number 11, add the language to limit the team to 1 funding per year and limit the coach or parent to 1 funding per year, and that keeps, we've basically been doing that anyway to keep them out of those 1099 tax issues. So we'll just add that to the policy. And that's all the changes for sports teams.
Victoria?
Yes, Jody, and it might have been just me not understanding what you said, but on number 4, I was trying to write this down because I wasn't part of the work group, so this, when you said demonstrating something, and I didn't get any of it.
It was in the policy that if they demonstrated self-help projects and stuff like that, that would go into consideration for them of being approved. Basically, I mean, if they qualify based on their percentage of Cherokee citizens, they get approved anyway, so it was not really needed in the policy.
Thank you.
Keith?
Yeah, 2 things. On the percentages, we moved it from 51 to 50%, and as I pointed out at one of the meetings previous, 51%, you might as well say 60%, because a team is about 10 to 12 kids typically. So you can't really have a 1% of a kid there, can you? Well, you can't really have a 0.3% of a kid either, so 33% really is the same thing as saying 40%. So it needs, in my book, it should say 30% or 40%, not 33%, because you're not going to have a 0.3 of a child. So it should be one of those 2 numbers in my book. I'm not suggesting which one, just the fact that it needs to be one or the other. The last thing is on the right to appeal. It says, in the event the sports team feels they were wrongfully made ineligible, they may appeal the decision to the Executive Finance Committee, whose decision will be final and no further appeal will be allowed. I think that needs to be slightly defined with may be appealed in writing, so it defines how we accept an appeal, and it needs to give a date of, say, example, 60 days after decision. So we can't leave it open that they can appeal 5 years from now against something.
So are you making a friendly to that?
I would make the friendly amendment on that one to add the language that the appeal would be in writing and that it would have to be submitted within 60 days of them being notified of being ineligible.
Okay. And who was the, who made the motion? Danny, do you accept the friendly?
Yes.
And who made the second? You accept it? Okay.
Now, on the other issue regarding the percentages, I didn't make a friendly on that.
Right.
I'm just, the people who were involved in that discussion, I would like to know if there was any, if that was ever talked about, or if there was a reason, so that I understand that before anything would be, talked about there.
Go ahead, Jody.
Basically, I know it was in discussion. I think it was originally suggested 35%, but I was the one that suggested 33 because basically you're looking at 1 in 3 kids. So, whether, you could look at any, whether there's 9 kids and 3 of them are, if there's 10,
3 of them are.
They got to have 4. So, I mean, it's something, there's, no matter what number of team amount you look at on the team, there's going to be some cutoff they could come short on. So just 1 in 3 I thought was a good number to go with. So that's the reason why I suggested 33.
Danny?
Yeah. we're trying to get this passed so that this year's teams can get their money to have their teams. I don't want to be rude, but this was open to anybody that wanted to show up this morning.
No, it wasn't. Had to keep it under.
So with that said, you know, we want to make sure that anything we do add, that we get it to these people as quickly as possible, because there's already been several teams that's already applied, so we're in a situation to where some of them's already got their 500, and if they've applied after today, they're going to get 595. So trying to keep things in an order here, I mean, I've got no issues as long as we can get it done and get it into where it doesn't run into when baseball season's over, they're finally not getting any help. That's my only concern.
Candace?
Yeah, I think overall, this, this is meant to broaden the pool of applicants, opening up to, teams who are 33% or more Cherokee citizens will receive some funding, which in the past they have not received any funding. I think that's a really positive move that's going to support more of our youth in these competitive leagues. This morning, our work group, I believe, was composed of 7. We had an 8th spot open, and all of us were, of course, open to comments from the rest of the counselors. So I definitely support Counselor Callison's statement that everyone's voice had the potential to be heard through that work group on this particular topic. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say to the working group, I truly appreciate you guys working on this and making the move to open it up to contiguous counties, including some of the at-large teams out there. I want to seek just clarification on one thing. The last we talked, it was for those contiguous counties, we were going to leave that percentage at 50, at the higher percentage, the 51%. And just want to clarify that is indeed the case.
It would be simpler if we just make them also eligible for the 33%. So, because then
okay.
we're looking at because some of the problem is some of the teams that have some citizens in jurisdiction and some out of jurisdiction, and out of reservation. So then it would just get real confusing for the staff too. So I don't think dollar-wise, it wouldn't be a big deal. I think we can do the same qualifications for those extended counties, the same as the reservation counties. Would be easier.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a heavy lift. I think it's inclusive, and I truly appreciate it. And I know there's a lot of teams out there, that are obviously we're going to get a little bit of an influx, and that's okay. I think we can handle it. But I truly appreciate it on behalf of those at-large teams and athletes. I say thank you to the work group, Speaker.
And one thing to always remember about this, and it was brought up today, Councilman Austin is correct. If you say 51, there is never 51%. It's always 60. That's the way it is. I mean, if you look at it from there, you can't get 51%. It's 50 and 1, that makes it 60%. That's just the way it is, and that's just a higher burden. So 50%, there's some good things said today about helping kids and how to help them, give them the most money we could without, getting them taxed. And I think we did that. So I think this is a good thing, and as soon as this is passed today, it goes into effect. So it's a good thing. Keith?
I truly do celebrate this. This is a move that tells the entire population of our children that we honor and support their work in our sports and those leaders as well. This is a very good thing to happen. Thank you.
Joe, did you have something? Or is it Sean? I'm sorry.
It's easy to get us mixed up.
I know, it's close.
Hey, just for clarification. You're welcome, Joe.
I was just going to say that third. I can see where a third of a player in Adair County.
Oh, my. Lace them up. Joe, so for clarification, this does go into effect, the
Yes,
the 595 and everything?
Once you pass the policy, it doesn't have to go to council or anything, so.
Okay, so.
So any applications we're looking, any applications that's coming in today, we're gonna be looking at tomorrow, so those will be effective, and then,
So not the October fiscal year
right,
thing?
right.
So
We-
just
That
immediate?
came out of the work group, just to go ahead and do it today, so.
All righty. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'll probably kind of have to see after a couple of months what kind of impact on our budget this is going to have, and may have to come back to get a little bit more funding before the end of the year, but,
Has anyone got the 500 yet?
yeah, oh,
Okay, I mean, this year?
yes.
So
Bunch of
just, I
teams.
mean, it's just gonna be a fact. If you got it yesterday,
Yeah.
it was fine, but the council acted.
Yeah.
And now we're moving on
It
with
wouldn't be
this
feasible,
simply.
I mean, feasible to give,
Right. You
go
bet.
through the
I
application
know.
process for $95.
I know, they're gonna be asking.
Yeah.
So just the plain answer is gonna be, hey, we did this today.
Yeah.
And from here on out, and sorry
The
about you
only
yesterday.
good thing as far as the past, those teams that ended up with 40% or whatever, we'll probably contact them and say, hey, you may qualify for this 33% now, and they would be able to reapply for that, so.
Well, appreciate you, Jody, doing all that number crunching and everybody involved. That's a good thing we did today.
Very good thing
Thank you,
today.
thank you, Chair.
Danny, did you have something?
No, Shelley explained to me.
Okay. Daryl?
Yeah, so I do have a question. So in some of these small towns, you know, there's youth league football, youth league soccer, youth league baseball. And sometimes it's the same coach. He coaches baseball, he coaches football, he coaches soccer.
Yeah.
Are they going to be
I know
allowed
where
to
you're
get-
going with that.
as long as it's a different team, they can still apply for the $595?
If it's a different, say, Daryl Legg coaches baseball and basketball. Generally, we've asked them to do the assistant coach or one of the parents for that second team. That way, it does avoid that tax issue. So they can have the same kids and, right, we don't require it to actually be the coach. As long as it's just one per team and one person for the year, so.
Candace?
Well, the work group spent a long time discussing all of the possible issues, but I just really want to commend the staff, the legislative staff, for the work that is done. You, Jody, but especially also Ms. Jennifer Kirk, who is the point person on all of these applications, who gets stacks and stacks of documents that she goes through and verifies and validates, and is also, up to this point, has been the point person on all the checks as well. So and of course, Shelley and Gail and Teddy and John as well. But just really commend the legislative staff for the work they do every day on this particular program.
It's a lot of work for her, because she does verify the address, the citizenship, because, we have a lot of them that want to turn in their CDIB card. If that doesn't work, because they have to be a citizen, because they could be a citizen of UKB, and we've had them to where they turned in their blue card, but they're no longer a citizen of Cherokee Nation because they've transferred to get some other benefit from UKB. So we have to kind of watch that, and the address, and there's all kinds of issues she has to work through. I mean, name changes, a lot of, she had one this past week that had 3 kids, and they had changed their names, not just their last name, but their whole name. And they had the legal documents, but they hadn't changed their citizenship, so we made the exception. Told them they need to get that changed or they won't qualify next year. The adoption had went through, the name change had went through 2 or 3 years, but they hadn't changed their citizenship card yet. But we kind of worked through those on exception, but one case by case, so.
All right, EO.
I just want to bring this up. I'm tickled to death with this. This extra $95 is going to help a lot. We haven't made any improvements in a while. But I think we're going to help more than anything, and we're going to help some kids that really need it, is this $300, or 33%, because I've seen in many a time there that there was a team would want to play, and nobody wanted them, nobody wanted them, so they didn't have any money and they're just disbanding. And I think this will get a lot more of our kids, some of our Cherokee kids that really need this. That's what I'm excited about on this. I'm excited about the whole thing, just tickled to death, but I think we'll see in the long run that this $300 will really be a good deal. Thank you.
All right, if there isn't any more comments, let's vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carries. Good job. Next, we have our number 8. Let's go Rex Jordan.
This is a discussion of possible action on the Cherokee Nation Junior Livestock Premium Auction Funding Program Assistance Policies.
And you put that in the form of a motion? All right, we have a motion. Okay, we had a motion and a second. Well, this was the second part of the work group, was on the livestock. So, Jody?
We have some of the same changes. First one is a change again for the change from the 14 county service area to the Cherokee Nation Reservation and the at-large portions of the counties that are partially within the reservation. Number 2, change the wording to say they are eligible for only one local, one district, and one state show. Number 3, change the local show funding from 100 to 200, and that'll leave the district at 200 and the state at 500. Number 4 is the change about the selection and verification process, kind of like before, to where the staff's doing that verification and approval, and this comes out in a report to executive and finance.
All right, is there any questions? Another good deal that was long and waiting to happen. There's some good things today. Keith, or was it Joe? Joe, can't get you right.
I was going to say, hey, this one, Rex, we talked about this a lot because we know a lot of kids do a lot of livestock. If you caught that state expo that they did, that young lady was a senior, had a show pig, and sold it right after for $34,000. And she's using that for her college. So that's money, and it was a breeding. So she's going to get recurred money from that. So, you know, you can take $500 and help the kids out, but man, if they know what they're doing, $34,000 in a one day for doing this, that's great, because that gave her an opportunity to go to college. So, you know, totally supporting. I love this thing when it goes with this and with these kids. So just wish we had more to spend with a lot of these kids. A lot of them love it. So, but that's a great program. So thank you, Chair.
Johnny?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I just, I feel compelled to just say thank you to the work group and for everybody that worked on this, and, just even to a small part, allowing those at-large, kids to be involved in that and participate, even in whatever way we can. It really does make a big deal, and it really does. It is super helpful. And on behalf of all of them, because you might not think so, but I get several calls a month on this exact topic, and I'm glad now to be able to go back to them and say that they can indeed apply for certain parts of this, and I do, to the work group, thank you very much. I truly appreciate your work on this, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Danny, you good? Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Good work on both. Okay, that brings us to number 9, Joe Deere.
Okay, this is discussion and possible action, formation of a tribal council work group for redistricting purposes. So I brought that up. If you guys, do we just go into discussion, or you want to explain what I was thinking of?
Well, you making a motion, or?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All right, discussion. You're up.
I reached out to pretty much every counselor that I called on their phone, just throw out some ideas. The idea to get the work group before we can actually get to work, there's going to be a lot of paperwork, maps, census, studies, data, a lot of data to go into that. Some districts are okay, and some you see has weird things going to it. So, and I think it's time for it to start. Census come up, it's a great time to do it. And I talked about doing formation of group, but I've talked to other people too, and they sort of like the way we'll go to it, but we have to get the data first. We have to request that. So whatever group comes together that does that is going to be assigned to gather that information. And I've heard maps that overlay, that we can have a bottom map of the 14 counties, and then have population maps so you can actually see and do the layers that way. So that's what I got, and I'm open to any other thing you guys want to talk about.
Anybody have any comments? Wes?
Yeah, I'm glad that Counselor Deere brought this up. Actually, a lot of things going on we forget, and before too long, it's like, oh, you got to have a month, you got to have this done because it's part of our laws. So I'm glad it's being brought up today so we can get that formed. Also, on the formation of it, it is a daunting task. We don't want to draw anybody out of lines, especially because the appearance it might have that you're, disenfranchising someone who has had desires to run for council, and it makes the optics so that you might want to do that for your own self, or include anybody that wants to run in some districts that are going to be open in the next 2 elections. So I definitely think we want to avoid that, and I agree that probably this council wants to avoid doing that, so a work group is a good place to get started. And, whenever we get that going, I'd definitely like to put my name down for it, so appreciate it, Speaker.
Okay. Anybody else? Johnny?
Mr. Speaker, this is, redistricting is a tough thing, man. I mean, what did it take? I think I heard it took 3 years or so last time they went through this. All I would say is that, man, this has got to be right, and it's not easy. And I respect the fact that Councilor Deere is pushing this forward. He knows how difficult this is going to be, and I appreciate all the phone calls that you've made on that. The last thing we need is to get tied up in court because something strange happened. At the end of the day, we follow the numbers on this, and it's truly important. And I believe it was it might have been Speaker or Deputy Speaker that brought up earlier about the optics, and also Councilor No Fire did. The optics again is who goes on that working group or however you decide to do it, and is that individual up for coming up for election or re-election, because we need to everything that we do for redistricting is going to be scrutinized one way or another. So it's important. All I'm saying is I take up everybody's time to say this, and let's just do it right. Whatever it takes, let's just make it right and make it above reproach, because it lasts for another 10 years, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Good words. Sean?
Yeah, just, I don't spend too much time on that topic, so just not too proud to say. So every 10 years, is that every 10 years, we have to do this, right?
Or at least review it, yeah.
Mr. Young, do you know the have to and by this date and about this redistricting?
I see you, Julia.
Okay, Julia.
No. I just recognize I didn't want her to sit there holding her hand up for
Okay.
5 hours.
All right, just anybody who knows more about this than I do, in our district, most Highway 59 kind of separates Adair County, and the way it's been for quite a while. I remember when Joe Crittenden and, some of Delaware County was joined, wasn't it? So it's something I don't know a whole lot about, and just interesting to hear some more discussion about it. So, Joe, you got some stuff?
Yeah, basically, it says, and Speaker knows too as well, my understanding, and John can look it up, is when there's a census, is when we're required to at least review it as part of redistricting. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily say you're gonna go in and change, but, we've seen the maps, we've been around, and not picking on Melvina, Councilor Shop Pouch, she was in every picture today, because she touches almost every district, So we know there's problems, or there's things coming down through districts, and so it's things to look at, and like your district, like you said, yours is pretty easy, north and south. Those are things that might not be changed. Then Darrell and EO, I've had those talks with everybody, but yeah, to answer your question, is when the census comes, is when you're supposed to review and look at it. So, Speaker, that's all I had right there.
Okay. Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if something's been passed since 2015 or whatever, but I was on council between 2007 and 2015. And we redistricted twice, I believe, during those 8 years. So I'm not sure, about censuses or 10 years or anything like that. My understanding was that we do it when we want to do it, basically. Now, again, we were going from 5 districts to 9 districts, right, on the or 15 districts, I'm sorry, on the second redistricting that we did. But, so maybe that change had something to do with it. But it's always been my understanding that we kind of do it when we believe there's a need to do it. Of course, there's a need to always have the demographic data, whenever we do it. So I just wanted to add that, just from experience.
Victoria?
Thank you. I have not had the experience of sitting in on any redistricting, so I know nothing about this. But in speaking, when Joe called, and I appreciate the call, you mentioned, and I think this, if there was a way to do this, it's a good idea, where you would have sort of a subgroup of people that are contiguous to your district. So like me and Dora and Danny would have our little subgroup because we aren't anywhere close to EOs. The other question would be, does every district have to be included? I don't know.
I don't believe so. I think it's just a review and looking at it, because there's some, I think Julia just said she had went through those redistricting 5 to 9 into 17. But the other things we're looking at now is, since we gave out the $2,000, I mean, our citizenship registration has gone through the roof. And we need to look at those numbers. I mean, because there's some districts that have a high population, and those things need to be looked at, because one counselor, I mean, he's dealing with a ton of people, and the other one has half the many people to deal with. So I think that's what redistricting looks at. I mean, but you're right, nothing has to change. I mean, I don't expect Josh Sams to come over and meet with me about Tulsa, and I don't expect to go all the way down to Josh Sams. I do expect Sean, but no. But yeah, that's what it is. Nothing really has to change. I mean, it's just a review, and census is here, registration is up, and I just think we need to look at it.
Melvina?
From experience in the past, you have to look at the whole district, because the numbers may have changed in the different areas. You've got to put so many numbers in a district. So if it overlaps into the next county, well, if it's like Mays or Delaware, and if there's more over here, then you would have to take that into consideration to make it equal districts. From a previous experience, that's the way I worked on. I think it was 2007 with Jody Fishing Hawk when they were doing that. But that one was kind of ridiculous when we went to Adair County. It's kind of like my district now. And so sometimes we kind of gerrymander things. So, but we've got to look at the whole 14 jurisdiction.
Keith, did you have something?
I'm trying to remember the law, because I know it reasonably well, but I don't have it memorized, verbatim. But we must have 15 independent individual districts within the nation. That's a set thing, and they must be population-wise within a reasonable amount of the same thing. I think it's plus or minus 10%. So no district can choose not to participate, because if District 15, 13, and 14 grew by 20%, and District 1, 2, and 3 actually lost population, that's going to affect the boundaries, pure and simple, of all districts. The small one's going to get bigger, and the big one's going to get smaller, in population. It is based on numbers. It's not based on geography. So it's going to be, that's following Councilor Kidwell saying, it's the numbers. It is the numbers, it's not the geography. We have to make sure the numbers are equal. Last time that was much tougher because the 911 system was not universal. It is, I believe, universal throughout the Cherokee Nation now. So that should actually really help us to make sure that we know where our people are. I expect this will be because of the hard lift that the council did that created the redistricting in 2013, they have put us in a position for this to be a much, much more easy task for us. And we owe them a great deal of thanks for setting it up for us. Thank you.
Anybody else? Dora?
So in 2010, 2 years ago, we did the United States Census. But has anybody heard Cherokee Nation's numbers that they came through with? I have not been able to get an answer on that. So,
This won't be based off of the census numbers, it'll be based off of our registration numbers.
yes.
Because it's based off of registered citizens, not what the census data says.
Right. And then, so we have in our registration department right now, who knows how many pieces of mail sitting there. So, I mean, I'm just throwing out things like everybody else. What we'll have to tackle. So, that's all.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a follow-up comment, sorry, and it has to do with that. Keep in mind that, like she just said, registration has unopened mail. I understand they're way behind. I'm not even going to say how long, how far back, but there are so many new applications that need to be counted, and I believe I heard that the cutoff is not necessarily going to be June of this year. It might be later because they're so far behind. So we couldn't do anything until we have those numbers, right? I mean, we couldn't look at a clear picture.
Okay, well, I've thought a lot about this too when it came up, and I've talked to people who are involved in redistricting, and I've talked to different councilmen here too. And I have to agree with Councilman Kidwell is that, you know, this needs to be done right. This needs to be done meticulous, but also in getting feedback from other people who have been through it, and this has been mentioned too, is that the transparency of things where you have people on there who aren't running coming up in a year, you know, and what I had with talking to our council our council attorney and different people, and I'd asked him what do you think about just at the very first have all tribal council chairpersons for each committee set on the initial committee just to get things started, because we are going to have to work with Chad Harshaw with maps. I mean, we're going to have to review current tribal council citizenship, review existing districts for adjustment, review geodata district mapping. We're going to have to propose revised district maps, boundaries. I mean, those things don't happen tomorrow. I mean, this is going to have to be a progression where as we get resources in and we can do our due diligence and say, hey, you know, the population has grown here. And you know, it's just kind of like, for instance, me and Melvina butt up in Jay, and she actually has more Jay than I do. You know, I have south of Jay, and she has north, and I would love to have north, and I bet she would love to have south, because, you know, we both just know people, but it doesn't work that way. You know, we have to make it fair for each councilman. So I think that's why, as we start off, we are going to have to collect a lot of data before we get into the nuts and bolts of things, and we're going to have to make requests for these things too. But as time goes on and we start getting these things, then I think, yes, absolutely, then we need to bust up in those groups and have those discussions. And you councilmen, after looking at the maps, you know, if we're going to have it where the heads of all the chairs of all the committees will first meet, at some point in time, people need to be integrated into those conversations, and your ideas need to be heard. Everybody's idea needs to be heard, and everybody's voice needs to be heard. So there needs to be a time where everybody gets to speak on this, and everybody gets to see absolutely everything we have, and we as a council decide how to go forward with it. But right now, getting it started, that would be my suggestion, just to request everything, that all the chairs of the groups get this thing started. And we will branch out, and everybody will be heard, and everybody will participate. I think that's the easiest way. I've personally thought maybe getting this thing started, and the transparency of it, where nobody actually has a horse in the race, the next year and a half. The people who I talked to said that was important in there, because they did have, and it did cause some problems. So I think if we can say, hey, this is how we're doing it, and nobody has a horse in the race, it will be fair and transparent, and it would be a good way to start. So that's my views on it. Also, and there's some things to think about. There could be some there will be some redistricting probably. Stuff that you did not have, you will now have, or stuff that you had, you won't. That very well could happen through all of this, and that is a big thing for all of us, to have to give up or gain. So those are some things that we will have to deal with along the way, because I know that we all have strong feelings about our constituents and our voters, and that's just what we're going to have to deal with. Possibly if we go through this, that's just part of it. Yeah, well, and we have to make sure that we do this right. This can't be something that we rush into and make decisions without being fully informed and have everything. We have to be right when we do this. This is how important it is. And our council, after we talk to our council, and I assume that you would be in favor of a work group, correct, sir? Do you think that would be prudent, or what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I think a work group would be the best place to start in the setup that you suggested with the committee chairs as the head to get us started. Collecting the data itself is going to be a daunting task. So I've touched base with Shelley on where we can store this stuff, maybe some kind of shared file, but that alone will be a pretty daunting task. So I suggest that approach.
Okay. Like Councilman Kidwell said, and that's what I was told too, the last one took 3.5 years. So, gosh dang, that's a long time. And some of you won't be here, and I'll barely be here if it takes that long, if I last my term, if I don't have to ride Joe Deere or anything home, I'll probably make it. But I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? I think doing it in an orderly manner like that, do you think that's feasible? Does that sound good? You don't like it?
It sounds good to me. The suggestion that the reason why I brought it up now is way in advance of election. And obviously, if you're a chair, it would be respectable if your co-chair is not up for election to be on that. That way, it is real transparent, So, but like Kidwell said, and we've talked about the numbers, the true numbers and the maps are going to show exactly where the redistrict should be. So there shouldn't be an opinion of I like this guy or that guy. It's truly a numbers game like accounting. You either have money in the bank or you don't. So.
Yeah, and I think if you think of it this way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you start here, right here, and you redistrict in this area and you start moving out, it's not like once this thing changes, and if it does change a lot, then it is going to change basically wherever you go.
Yep.
From there. That's something that's going to happen, and we just need to understand that when we go. It's we're going to be at the mercy of the populations. That's the way it is. So just need to be aware of that once it gets started.
Well, I'm hoping the work that they did previously does make it easier, like Counselor Austin said, and the numbers pop out, and then we can just go through that. But the hardest part's going to be getting the numbers and the layered maps that shows the different areas, so.
And that's why I think if we do it this way and we request all of those things, and once we get everything we need to go forward, then we can discuss again and get things going. Julia?
I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I know, on this, but I did just want to throw it out there that if, depending on how many people are wanted for a work group on this, and if people who, it needs to be people who don't have a horse in the race, to use your language, and you find that you're coming up short on anything, just pointing out that the at-large counselors do not have a horse in the race. So if you find yourself needing to fill in, that we would be available. Otherwise, I think that this is probably something that Mr. Kidwell and I, it's not in our interest at all, right? Which is not to say that we're not interested, right? But it's not anything that's going to impact us. So there may be a reason for us to not be included on the work group, but I'm just pointing out that, that's probably generally going to be the case. But because we don't have a specific interest, there may be a reason that we could fill into. So I just toss that out there.
Yep.
I think Counselor Kidwell would
Good
be a
point.
great part of that group with his being at large, I think he'd be a good person to work in that group.
Okay, I guess
For sure.
the thing now that we have to figure out is, this says discussion, possible action. Are we through discussion? Do we want to take action? Do we want to, let me throw this out there. Any time that I've been involved in any idea that has came up and there's immediate discussion, it seems like 2 or 3 days later, we think of something. Well, gosh dang, you hit me with this all at one day, and all of these things have been brought up, and I really didn't think about it. And is this something that needs to be tabled for one more month so we can maybe get our ducks in a row a little better, or do we want to go ahead and vote on this, somebody make a nomination on the work group, or what? I mean, where do we want to go today?
I
Okay,
suggest
Dora,
we
hold
start
up.
the group.
Dora?
You second?
And maybe Mr. Young can speak to this. I wonder if we request data, at what point do we set a date for, this is the date that we are going to begin the count, or there's got to be a date set that we're going to use, that we begin with what's on the books. Is that right?
I'd have to look back and see what the practice was in the past. There will have to, because it's fluid, there will have to be a cutoff point somewhere.
Right.
I don't know where that'll be, and it might also be determined by how much data we get and how much of discrepancy there is in what we have. So I think my gut sense is there's going to have to be some type of objective date that we say, as of this date, these populations residing here. I'd be a little leery to venture a guess as to when that date would be, but my sense is we have to set something.
So we can review data for however long and then decide to set a date. Would that be correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So is there any chairs right now of any committees that are up for reelection? Who? Darrell?
I'm up for reelection, so it's up to you, your coach
And okay, and Sean? Okay,
He's getting terminated.
you're right, he terms out, right. Okay,
We got plenty that are in their, that have ran their last eligible election right now.
Right.
That to serve with enough numbers to make
Right.
a body of 5 or
and that would be, I think that would be good, I mean, for, you who do turn out to be on there anyway.
Well, I'd make a motion to empower the speaker to form a work group of between 5 or 7 people of the council people who are serving and are no longer eligible.
Or chairs,
to be
maybe?
elected.
I was talking about chairs.
Okay, I'm cool with that,
Okay,
because chairs almost are universally that anyway.
yeah.
Almost.
Well, I'm still eligible, so. All right, we have a, Gio?
That's gonna be, population only? Will mileage come into effect on any of that, or is it just population only?
John?
Yeah.
Did you get him? Okay.
Yeah, Speaker, I was thinking June might be the date.
Do what now, Keith?
To refine my motion, it would be to empower the speaker to form a work group of 5 to 7 people of tribal council, of the chairs to make up the initial work group.
Okay,
And of course, could be amended at a later date as needed.
okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All right, all
No, I
in,
was just going to say, the last thing I wanted to say is you're talking about Counselor Dora, is the date that they're talking about, you know, that year that we set the 2,000 was June. I think maybe we should look around June because the need for the 2,000, you're going to have a lot of people that's going to be in there before June. So I think June or July would be a good time to look at a plus or minus 15,000.
let's vote on this. We got a motion and a second. We'll get
Okay.
back to that, okay? All in favor of that motion?
All right.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. If there's no other discussion, we'll do this after. We'll.
That's all I had.
Okay, all right. Well, then let's just move on. All right, are there any announcements? Wes?
One quick announcement. I know this would be in education, but it just happened. Sequoia High School junior Zach Cooper was selected for the 22 Bassmasters High School All-State Fishing Team, which is pretty astonishing considering they've only really had 2 seasons that they've been starting that program over there at Sequoia High School. And so I just wanted to shout out to him and all they're doing over there with the fishing team. So appreciate it, Speaker.
Good deal. That's awesome. Keith?
We usually would do this during council. Tonight, we just have a special council, but, so I actually want to recognize a gentleman who died yesterday in my district. His name's Billy Lowther. And Billy Lowther died unexpectedly. He wasn't ill. This was not yesterday, it was actually the day before yesterday. He was sitting outside in his lawn chair, soaking up the sunshine, and just closed his eyes and went to the Creator. And that just really touched my heart that this man died in such a peaceful way on such a warm sunshine day in the springtime, this Cherokee man. And I just wanted to remember him today. Please lift up Billy Lowther.
Are there any other announcements? Okay. A lot of good discussion today. There was. And again, we may not agree, but I do like the willingness to let everybody say their piece. I think that's just awesome. I think that's a wonderful thing that this council can do. So the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, April 28th at 1 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? We have a motion and a second. We're adjourned.